It was supposed to be just another televised roundtable, a five-person panel, a conversation on national security, a safe, scripted space for sound bites, until she walked in. Kristi Noem, governor of South Dakota, pistol on her hip, smirk on her face, and a stack of printed headlines under her arm. She didn't sit. She stood behind her chair like a sheriff in a courtroom. And then, like dropping a match in dry grass, she said it. Let me be very clear. If these so-called protests ever reach my state's border again, I will treat them as an invasion, and I won't ask permission to protect my people. The moderator blinked. The veteran next to her shifted uncomfortably. And Jasmine Crockett? She didn't even move. She just watched. The panel froze for a beat. Then the host scrambled to pivot. Governor Noem, are you saying you'd deploy the National Guard against civilians? If they're carrying chaos, yes, I protect order. That word, protect. So confident, so rehearsed. And yet, it echoed off the walls like a threat dressed as leadership. That's when Jasmine finally leaned forward. No outrage, no raised voice, just clarity. Governor, who are you trying to protect? The table went silent. Even Kristi paused. Jasmine repeated it, slower this time. Because the people protesting, they look a lot like the people your laws forget. And if protection means silencing them, then maybe you're not protecting your state. Maybe you're protecting your comfort. Kristi narrowed her eyes. You think I'm afraid of the truth? Jasmine didn't flinch. Number, I think you're afraid of the mirror. The show cut to commercial faster than anyone expected, but not before the audience caught it. The moment a woman with a badge made a threat, and the woman with no weapon but her voice, turned it into a question the nation couldn't ignore. The moment the segment ended, Jasmine's phone lit up. Not just texts, but calls from senior aides, journalists, activists, and one nervous producer who whispered, Governor Noem is furious. You might be getting a letter. Jasmine didn't flinch. She was already halfway down the hallway, heels clicking like punctuation marks. Back in the studio, Kristi Noem wasn't just angry. She was orchestrating. A new tweet appeared moments later. Radicals like Jasmine Crockett don't want protection. They want power. That's why they're offended when someone actually defends America. Her supporters erupted. Fox News aired the clip on loop. Protect Our Borders trended, and within an hour, political accounts began calling Jasmine anti-law, reckless, unpatriotic. But Jasmine had seen worse. She'd been labeled loud when she was just clear, aggressive when she was just certain, dangerous when she was just visible. By nightfall, Jasmine walked into a quiet hotel room and opened her laptop. Noem was live again, this time on a national platform. I'm not going to apologize for defending American soil. What I will say is this. If you're uncomfortable with law and order, maybe you're standing on the wrong side of both. Jasmine leaned in. She didn't write a tweet. She opened a folder labeled Unspoken Protections. Inside, photos from a small protest in Pierre, South Dakota, where two teens were handcuffed for holding signs. Legal records showing ICE coordination with state police. A map of every time protection was invoked, but only in neighborhoods with no mayors who looked like her. And then, a voice memo. From a mother in Sioux Falls. They said they were protecting us. But they never asked who we needed protection from. Jasmine sat back. She wasn't preparing a rebuttal. She was preparing the receipts. Because Kristi hadn't just attacked her. She'd revealed what she thought protection meant. And Jasmine? She was going to show the country what it actually cost. The next morning, Jasmine didn't go on offense. She went on record. She scheduled an appearance on Morning Brief, a moderate but widely watched news show, not for drama, but for documentation. They thought she'd come to respond to Kristi's threats. She came with a USB drive and a yellow legal pad. The host opened carefully. Congresswoman Crockett, the governor accused you of undermining law and order. How do you respond? Jasmine smiled, just barely. By asking, whose order and whose law? Because protection isn't a principle, it's a policy, and I brought proof it's been uneven. She pulled out a folded map, color-coded, annotated, and undeniable. Red zones, areas where protesters had been detained preemptively. Green, protests where armed counter-demonstrators were escorted safely. Blue, zones where no police showed up, because the protest was pro-law enforcement. Same state, same week, different reactions depending on the message, the skin tone, and the cameras. The host leaned in. Are you suggesting the governor's idea of protection is selective? Jasmine didn't blink. I'm suggesting it's targeted. Next came the body cam footage, acquired legally, time-stamped, and aired live. A young Latina girl asking an officer why she was being searched. A quiet, middle-aged man held on suspicion of walking. A protest Kristi Noem had called violent, with 0 arrests. The panel tried to pivot, but Jasmine leaned forward and dropped one last line. If you're only safe when you agree, then it's not protection. It's power in a uniform. The clip went viral in hours, not just among progressives, moderates, veterans, even a few former Noem supporters. They didn't all agree with Jasmine, but they couldn't unsee what she showed. Kristi's camp issued a new press release that night, more defiant, more aggressive, but also more defensive, because Jasmine hadn't just challenged Kristi's rhetoric. She'd documented it, and now the question hung in the air like a live wire. If protection is this selective, what does that make the protector? Kristi Noem wasn't rattled. She was regrouping. Behind closed doors, her team launched Project Restore Order, a 3-day media blitz aimed to reclaim the narrative. New ads, tougher language, and a headline-ready catchphrase. Protection means action, no exceptions. She booked interviews on 5 networks, surrounded herself with sheriffs, and gave sound bites that hit hard. This country isn't suffering from too much authority. It's suffering from too little accountability. The crowd clapped. The base cheered. And yet, something wasn't landing the way it used to, because people had started looking closer. At that same moment, Jasmine Crockett was backstage at a university town hall in Atlanta. The room wasn't full of cameras. It was full of students, veterans, nurses, a janitor who left work early to make it. She didn't walk in with slogans. She walked in with a folder labeled, Voices They Didn't Air. She read from it. They searched my car because I had a bumper sticker. They asked me what country I was from. I was born in Omaha. They told me to stand still. I was 12. These weren't headlines. They were experiences. And as she finished, an older woman in the back stood up and said, You're not just telling our stories. You're telling the part they keep cutting from the broadcast. The room erupted. No music, no mic drop. Just a moment that didn't need amplification. Later that night, something strange happened. CNN booked Jasmine for a primetime segment, not to debate, but to explain. Clips from her speech started trending, not from her own account, but from those who had once doubted her. A retired police chief tweeted, You don't have to agree with everything she says, but you should probably start listening. Kristi's campaign didn't panic. They tripled down. But behind the curtain, one of her senior advisors whispered what she already feared. We're losing the center, not because she's louder, but because she's making people feel heard. And that was the moment Jasmine's voice stopped being opposition. It became undeniable. It started with a clip. 10 seconds. Grainy. Forgotten by most, until Jasmine retweeted it. We don't apologize for protecting what's ours. Kristi Noem, 2018, speaking at a private donor dinner. It didn't sound new. It didn't sound shocking, until you watched who she was pointing at. A room full of local journalists. One of them, a young Native American reporter, had asked if what's ours included reservations. Kristi never answered. She turned her back. That clip? It never aired, but Jasmine found it, and she let the internet finish the sentence. The backlash didn't begin with politicians. It began with tribal leaders. One by one, statements poured in. Protection shouldn't mean erasure. We remember who was here first. You can't call it your land if you refuse to walk its history. Kristi Noem remained silent for 24 hours. When she finally responded, it was with a flag pin and a familiar line. My record speaks for itself. Jasmine didn't speak at all that day. She posted 3 documents: a list of education funding cuts on tribal land, arrest records from pipeline protest camps, a speech Kristi gave where she called the National Guard her own personal border. Then one final tweet. You're right, Governor. Your record does speak. I just turned up the volume. That night, Jasmine appeared at a candlelight vigil for missing Indigenous women. She didn't hold the mic. She handed it to a Dakota elder. The woman's voice shook as she said, "For years we asked who would stand with us. Tonight, someone finally asked, who are they protecting?" And just like that, the question was no longer political. It was ancestral. The media didn't know how to handle it. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a gaffe. It was a reckoning with receipts, memory, and a woman who refused to flinch. Kristi Noem's team had had enough. Polls were dipping, headlines were shifting, and donors were getting nervous. She needed control, so they arranged a nationally televised leadership special on prime time, red backdrop, studio lights, a carefully selected audience. The idea: reframe the narrative, look strong, and make Jasmine Crockett seem like the chaos. Except, Jasmine accepted the invitation. Live, same studio, no prep. Producers tried to manage it, separate chairs, staggered segments. Jasmine didn't flinch. When asked if she wanted a list of expected questions, she declined. I'm not here to rehearse fear. I'm here to respond to it. The night arrived. Kristi walked in first, composed, crisp, measured. She opened with fire. Our country's being overrun by people who don't respect its laws. I respect every American, but I will not apologize for putting our own citizens first. The crowd clapped on cue. Then Jasmine entered. No slogan, no flag pin, just a calm gaze and a pen in her hand. The moderator asked, Congresswoman Crockett, you've been highly critical of Governor Noem's policies. What's your message tonight? Jasmine didn't raise her voice. That leadership isn't measured by volume or vengeance. It's measured by who you're willing to listen to when it's inconvenient. Kristi leaned forward. What's inconvenient is being told I should feel guilty for protecting my people. Jasmine nodded slowly. And what's dangerous is assuming your people stops at the edge of your comfort zone. The audience shifted, a murmur, a pause, and then Jasmine delivered the line that would make the headlines the next morning. You keep saying you protect, but when was the last time you sat down with someone who needed protection from you? Kristi froze, just for a second, but the camera caught it, and so did the country. Jasmine didn't smile. She just folded her hands and waited, because this wasn't a soundbite war. This was a live mirror. The morning after the debate, America didn't wake up divided. It woke up electrified. Clips of Jasmine's calm takedown flooded TikTok and Instagram reels. College students used her line, "Who are you protecting them from?" in protest chants from D.C. to Denver. But the moment that shook everything? It didn't come from a pundit. It came from a veteran. Major Kenneth Barnes, U.S. Army, Ret, appeared on live TV. He wasn't political. He didn't choose sides. But with his bronze stars on display, he looked straight into the camera. I served to protect all Americans, not just the ones who vote a certain way. Jasmine Crockett asked the most honest question I've heard in 10 years. Who are we really protecting? And if we can't answer that, maybe we've forgotten what service means. His words broke through. Kristi's base tried to spin it, claiming he was misinformed, out of touch. But then came the avalanche. Firefighters, public school teachers, nurses from red states, each sharing stories of being labeled unpatriotic for asking questions. And suddenly, Jasmine's voice wasn't alone. It was a chorus. Meanwhile, Kristi doubled down. She appeared on a hard right podcast and delivered what was meant to be a knockout. This country needs fewer talkers and more doers. I carry a gun because words don't stop chaos. The host chuckled, but in the comments, something shifted. The top reply read, "Jasmine didn't stop chaos." She revealed its source. Jasmine remained silent that day, but on her desk sat a new envelope. No return address. Inside, a photograph of 3 kids holding signs that read, "We exist. We deserve protection. Thank you for asking." No name, no message, just a handwritten line. Finally, someone saw us. Jasmine smiled softly. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about witnessing. Kristi Noem wasn't done. After the veteran's words went viral, after Jasmine's calm turned into a movement, Kristi did what her advisors begged her not to do. She made it personal. Jasmine Crockett doesn't care about protection. She cares about attention. She's made a career out of division, and now she's playing the victim, again. It wasn't just a quote. It was the cornerstone of her next campaign ad, aired during prime time. Bold white letters on black. She asks questions. But who answers for the chaos she causes? That night, the internet lit up again, but not the way Kristi expected. People started sharing Jasmine's full speeches, her congressional record, clips of her comforting victims of police brutality, footage of her walking alone into a protest zone to de-escalate violence. And then, one video surfaced from 5 years ago, grainy, cell phone footage. Jasmine, in a hoodie, holding a crying teenager after tear gas was deployed in Dallas. No cameras, no press, just her voice. "I've got you. You're not alone." By morning, the hashtag number sign "She Protected Me" was trending. Stories poured in. A community organizer she once helped clear charges for. A mother who remembered her delivering diapers during a government shutdown. A nurse who said Jasmine stayed 3 hours after a speech just to listen. Kristi tried to respond again, this time with numbers and crime stats, but it was too late. Jasmine wasn't the story anymore. The people she'd stood with were, and when asked if she wanted to counter the attack ad, Jasmine simply said, "You can't smear someone who's never claimed perfection, but you also can't erase presence, and I've been present." That line hit harder than any ad. Because leadership wasn't about defending yourself, it was about showing up when no one's watching. It was the final hearing of the month, a Homeland Security Oversight Panel. Kristi Noem had been invited as a guest witness. Jasmine Crockett was sitting third chair from the center. The room was tense, half press, half pressure. Kristi had rehearsed her lines, surrounded by notes and hand-picked quotes. Jasmine had one folder and one name written on the inside cover. The questioning began. Predictable, measured. Kristi spoke in declarations. "If we don't draw a hard line at our borders, we invite chaos to every community in this country. Protection without strength is just wishful thinking. Real leadership doesn't apologize, it acts." The crowd nodded. The cameras zoomed in. Then came Jasmine's turn. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shuffle papers. She simply looked at Kristi and asked, "Do you remember Jamal Reyes?" The room shifted. Kristi blinked. The name hung in the air like smoke. Who?" "Jamal Reyes," Jasmine repeated. "U.S. citizen, father of 2, pulled over on a highway in your state during a federal state ICE operation, detained, held for 18 hours, released with no charges, and then fired from his job for causing a scene. You called that day a success. I'm asking, who was protected?" Silence. Cameras caught the tightness in Kristi's jaw, the stillness in her hands. Jasmine continued. "Was it his daughters? His employer? The officer who asked him to prove he was American? Or was it your narrative?" Noem reached for a reply, but words don't come easy when evidence takes their place, and Jasmine wasn't done. I've listened to you tell this country what protection looks like, but it's always force, fences, fear, never faces. So tonight, Governor, I brought a face. She turned the folder toward the committee. A photo of Jamal Reyes and his daughters, smiling, laughing, human. Not chaos, not a threat, just a father, silenced by someone else's safety. No one spoke, not the chairman, not the press. And for the first time since the debate began, Kristi Noem had no soundbite left. The photo of Jamal Reyes and his daughters remained on the table. No one dared move it. No one dared speak over it. Even the chairman, a seasoned voice used to controlling hearings, waited. Jasmine didn't look at the cameras. She looked at Kristi Noem, and this time her voice was quieter than ever. I asked you a question, Governor. Who are you trying to protect? Because what I see is that protection, when only extended to the familiar, becomes a cage for everyone else. Kristi Noem sat perfectly still, but the stillness didn't look like confidence anymore. It looked like calculation. Her aides shifted behind her. One picked up a notepad. Another slowly unplugged a mic. Not because the hearing was over, but because something was. Jasmine stood. She didn't thank the committee. She didn't raise her fist. She simply gathered the photo and tucked it gently back into the folder. And as she turned to leave, she said, so softly it almost didn't carry, the safest country isn't the one with the loudest borders. It's the one where every child knows they belong. The room was silent. But across the country, millions were watching. And something had shifted, not just in politics, but in conscience. People didn't chant that night. They reflected. Because the story wasn't about a soundbite anymore. It wasn't about left or right. It was about who we claimed to protect and who we're willing to ignore. Kristi Noem left the building from the side entrance. No press, no statement. And for the first time in her career, not a single headline had her quote above the fold. That space, it belonged to Jasmine Crockett, not because she fought harder, but because she asked the question no one else dared to, and then let the silence answer for itself. I didn't come here to win a debate. I came here to ask a question this country's been dodging for too long. Who do we protect? And who do we ignore in the name of that protection? Power isn't proven by how loud you shout or how tight you build your walls. It's shown in how carefully you carry the vulnerable. Tonight wasn't about politics. It was about presence. And I showed up, not just for myself, but for every person who's been treated like a threat when all they ever wanted was to be seen as human. You don't have to agree with me, but if my question made you pause, even for a second, then maybe the silence is speaking louder than I ever could.